you think about the macroeconomics in Russia, as you know, Russia is one of the original countries within the BRIC group of countries. Tremendous growth over the last several years, continues to have a healthy growth rate in terms of GDP. And with all the growth, there are tremendous amount of changes going on in how Russian businesses are evolving from a supply chain perspective. The retail industry in Russia has traditionally been very fragmented. What we have in Russia are some emerging local Russian players who are becoming retail powerhouses. They're growing at anywhere from 25 to 50% year over year. Additionally, some of the international retailers have entered the Russian market, and they're gaining market share as well. So the retail environment in Russia is evolving very rapidly, a tremendous amount of growth, and a lot of the growth has traditionally been concentrated in the metropolitan areas, particularly around Moscow and St. Petersburg. But now what we are seeing is a lot of the retailers are also expanding into some of the other rural areas. As you know, Russia is a very expansive country, and that creates its own unique challenges from a distribution and a logistics perspective as well. In fact, the average length of haul in Russia is a lot higher than anywhere in the rest of Western Europe or even in North America. Okay? If you look beyond retail on the manufacturing side, Russia traditionally has had a very large infrastructure companies. Again, a large, expansive country like Russia has large needs in terms of metals companies, in terms of construction companies, in terms of utility companies, in terms of energy companies. And if you think about how those companies are evolving, what we're finding is, particularly in the metals industry, you know, some of those Russian organizations are taking a very aggressive approach to acquire organizations, not only within Russia, where there's been some consolidation, but also outside of Russia, you know, on a global basis, companies like Servistol, companies like TMK, and others. So, you know, the manufacturing industry is much more focused around the infrastructure elements. The retail industry continues to grow. Again, in the retail industry also there's been tremendous amounts of consolidation. And so if you think about the industry context and look at what companies have done from a systems perspective, from a process perspective, you know, what we've found is that in the last 7 to 8 years, a lot of the Russian organizations have gone ahead and deployed some form of an ERP backbone, okay? And a lot of them are now looking at how do they get entitlement from all those investments around the ERP infrastructure. And that's where supply chain management solutions come into play, okay? And a lot of them are trying to get intelligent around how to organize, how to structure their processes, how to measure the right, you know, metrics. And that's a tremendous opportunity for JDA to bring its global expertise and apply it to the Russian context. And what we found is that in Russia, organizations are very hungry and they're very eager to learn best practices. And when we are, you know, working with Russian organizations, and by the way, we're already working with roughly 20 clients in Russia, you know, they are very, very eager to learn, you know, how best to structure their supply chain processes. And therein lies the opportunity for JDA. The timing is right. The organizations are continuing to grow. And at the same time, JDA is best positioned as a supply chain, best-of-breed solutions provider to add tremendous value to these organizations. So really that's the reason why we're really focusing on Russia and really entering the Russian market, you know, and creating a local presence and really enabling our clients to better work with us while still leveraging a broad network of partners. So again, if you look at the Russian market, it's again a very broad market, very diverse set of industries, very diverse set of challenges. But from a JDA perspective, we're focused on 3 specific areas. First, on the retail side, you know, JDA has a broad experience base, a broad solution base when it comes to retail. And again, in retail, there's some very large emerging food and grocery companies, but there are also some very large emerging softline, hardline, and DIY companies that are growing in Russia as well. In addition to that, a lot of the multinationals, as I mentioned earlier, have entered the retail market in Russia, and a lot of them are already JDA clients. So retail overall is a big focus area for us. And within retail, what we're finding is tremendous interest, and we've already gained tremendous penetration with our category management solution for space planning, floor planning, planogramming capabilities. We're taking that wedge to really expand into the supply chain area with forecasting replenishment both at the DC and the store level, and then going further upstream on the planning side with financial planning, assortment planning, pricing, and promotion solutions. So that's on the retail front. The second important focus area for us is the metals industry. JDA has a long history and a very broad global client base when it comes to metals powerhouses all over the world, in Asia, in North America, as well as in most of Europe. So we're taking that metal solution footprint and really layering that on top of the ERP backbone that a lot of organizations have in Russia. And we're focusing on elements around demand planning, supply planning, master planning, order promising, factory planning, transportation planning, all of those different elements in the metals industry. Going down to material allocation and some very detailed scheduling capabilities that we have when it comes to the metals industries. And as I mentioned earlier, Russia has some very large indigenous metals organizations that are operating not only in Russia now, but also on a global basis. The third key area for focus for us is transportation as a solution space going across all industries in Russia. Transportation typically is a very large cost driver in the Russian market, partly because of the price of fuel climbing up, but also for the large part because the length of haul, the average distance that needs to be traveled in Russia is a lot larger than most other countries in the world. So transportation as a percentage of cost of goods sold is very high. And again, in transportation, JDA has a very strong 500 plus client base globally. We have a tremendous amount of experience when it comes to how companies can procure transportation better, how they can model their network to create efficiencies better, how they can plan and optimize their daily routings, their consolidation opportunities, and also how they can manage the entire execution life cycle and monitor and settle for that freight payment aspect. So all of those different elements are important from a transportation perspective, going across retail, CPG, metals, manufacturing, and even some of the high-tech companies. And what's interesting is some of the large global multinational clients that JDA has are already using our solutions in the Russian market. So we already have a good reference base as well in Russia. So those are the key focus areas for us in Russia, and we're very excited to really capitalize on that.